Hi, I'm Vikas van Vieren. I'm Business Development Director for Henley Business School. Henley is one of the top ranked international business schools. We've been operating in South Africa for 25 years and internationally for 70 years. Currently represented in 16 countries across the world, but the biggest branch outside of the United Kingdom is the one in South Africa, where we service not just South Africa but also the rest of the African continent. Our predominant focus at Henley Business School in South Africa is on the MBA. So we run a highly credible, highly respected MBA degree, executive MBA degree, that's currently growing at such a rate that we are barely keeping up. For interest sake, we currently have more than half of our MBA students internationally that come from South Africa and from the rest of the African continent, which for us really means that what we are doing is making sense for the South African market as well as for the African market. In addition to the MBA, we have a big focus on executive education programs. We run management programs, leadership programs. On a very practical level, it's all around providing managers and leaders within companies and within the private sector with the competence and the skills that they need to really perform and to really make a difference. We all know that in South Africa we have a shortage of leadership and a shortage of management, but we also believe that we have a very important role to play in the capacitating of management and leadership skills for the rest of the African continent.
Tell me a little bit about Henley's culture. Why should one go to Henley instead of Gibbs, for instance?
First of all, I think the track record. Henley has a 70 years, I mentioned, track record. We also have, to a certain extent, kind of earned our stripes, as it be when it comes to action learning and the practical application of learning. On the outset, when Henley was started in the 1940s, the original mandate was to provide managers and leaders with very practical skills. And we also worked with some of the founding fathers of action learning right in the beginning in the 1940s. So through this process, we've got to a point now where we know and we understand how to provide people with skills and learning that will not just enhance their understanding and their knowledge, but more importantly, that will enable and empower them to shift their behavior. And I really believe that's one of the main reasons why we have become such a predominant player in the world market.
Now, how difficult is it to get your MBA today with a guy who's got a family, who's got a wife, who's got all the other commitments still, how do you manage to get the MBA? Because I think that is one of the factors preventing people from actually doing it.
It is a challenge. I mean, one of the big challenges generally in business is how do I continue to learn while I'm actually working and while I'm making a contribution? It's not an easy thing, and as our complexity in business changes, it becomes a necessity. It's not a luxury. So if you believe that you've got a degree and you're now finished, you're sadly mistaken. Learning only starts when you finish your degrees and when you start your working career. So an MBA is critical, and the kind of executive development that we do is as critical for people to go on this continuous learning path. So going back to your question, yes, it's difficult. It's always a challenge. It's not something that you do on the sideline or as a part-time thing. You have to dedicate time and effort to it. But what we have done at Henley, which is again quite unique, is we've designed what we call a family-friendly MBA. So we've taken the MBA model and we've designed it in a way that does not lead to divorce. That does not mean that you're going to lose your job because you're doing your MBA and you're not performing at work anymore. We've actually come up with a model that makes it challenging, because it has to be challenging. There has to be discomfort. You know, Peter Kustenbaum is famous for saying that being uncomfortable is what it feels like to grow. So we have to get people into that sense of saying, I'm under pressure, I have to do a lot of work. But at the same time, we've designed it into a process and a method that is doable and that's completable. As a result of that, Henley has one of the highest throughput rates of any of the MBA degrees, not just in South Africa, but also internationally.
Because where's the most interest? Is it established managers, older managers coming into this, it's knocking on Henley's door, or is it more the young ones moving in?
I think it's a little bit of both. So if I kind of look at our typical market and I kind of split it into two, it's exactly what you just mentioned. Those are the two markets. As we climb the corporate ladder, one of the things we do find is our level of complexity increases. So when you get to an executive or a senior management level, you deal with a lot more complex information, and your foundational learning, going back to what I said earlier, your degrees that you did will not necessarily provide you with the level of understanding and insight to deal with that complexity. So that will be one of our key markets, is how do we capacitate senior managers and executives with complex thinking, creative thinking, strategic thinking, systemic thinking skills But the commonality in all of what I just said is thinking. How do we get people to think differently so that they can behave differently? But I think more importantly, as we look again at Africa and South Africa, a very big need is for the foundational level of management skills and management understanding. A lot of people get promoted out of levels of technical competence into a managerial position where they now do not have the prerequisite skills to be good managers. And that is where we find a big part of our market is how do we give these new managers the confidence and the ability to perform as managers, not just as technical experts.